Hello everyone, welcome to the Concern Podcast where we unpacked political, socio-economic and cultural stories shaping our world. I'm Emmanuel Taban, and on this video I want us to look at the recently released BBC documentary Blood Parliament that has been making lots of stories across Kenya and in some parts of the world. A documentary that has exposed the government of Kenya's heavy-handed response and crackdown on the June 25th last year's protest that was taken by the Gen Zs on the streets of Nairobi. We will look at how the public responded to this documentary. We will look also at how the politicians, both from the government and those allied to the opposition, responded to this documentary. And yes, some people might ask, now that BBC has released this documentary, they have exposed the people that actually participated in killing some of the protesters. So what? So to answer this question, we will also look at how this documentary might change people's perspective, especially the international community, about Kenya being a country that is known for having some sympathy on democratic democratic principle. So join me as we delve into this story in depth. Now, we all know that last year on June 25th, so many Kenyans, especially those who preferably call themselves as Gen Z, the young Kenyans, went on the street of Nairobi and other parts of the country protesting against a piece of legislation called the Finance Bill 2024, which proposed an increase in Kenya's tax system. And the bill proposes an increase on so many items, one of them being an increase on taxes for digital platform, an increase in taxes on foreign exchange transaction and mobile money transaction, an increase in taxes on imported oil and all other stuff. And this felt like a very big punch on the faces of so many young people, because these are people who are unemployed, that the government has not created any job, but the government is asking them to pay taxes. So they feel so embarrassed, they feel so angered, and as a result, they went on the street of Nairobi and other parts of the country asking for the government actually to withdraw the bill in totality and not to make any amendment. On 25th of June 2026, the protesters hit the streets of Nairobi, and that was the same day when the National Assembly was voting for that finance bill. And the protesters went with the aim of occupying the parliament just to interrupt the National Assembly from voting for that finance bill, because they know anyway that the National Assembly was going to vote in favor of the finance bill, because most of the members in the National Assembly are allied to the presidents, and in most cases they don't vote on their concerns or on their own opinion, but because the president and the government has asked them to do so. And the most unique thing about this protest that happened on June 25th is that this protest was done by not an ordinary group of Kenyans. These are people who are well informed about their constitutional rights. They know what is enshrined in their constitution. They know their rights. They know that it is their right on the constitution to go and protest peacefully. They know that it is their right to call out the government when the government is not doing the right thing. These are people who are educated. These are young people who are eloquent, who know how to express themselves, and they're not allied to any ethnic group. They term themselves as tribeless and leaderless, and this was actually a very hard time for the government, because the protest was so popular and so many people, tons and thousands, on the street of Nairobi. And whereas some people would say that the government would have listened to the demands of these young people and just like ask them what are their concerns or what do they exactly need, the government went on and deployed the police service and the KDF, the Kenyan Defense Forces, on the street of Nairobi. And these people inserted a very, very heavy force on the protesters. They used tear gas, they used water canoes on the protesters, and some of these forces, the KDF used live bullets, and people were killed and wounded on that day. And therefore, after the protest, so many government officials came out and say, you know what, this protest was just there are people who took it as an advantage and some criminals. The president said that, and they started maybe shooting. And by that time, the CS for Interior, now the Deputy President, Professor Kithure Kindiki, came out and said, I am a professor and I've taught law for a quarter, like almost 25 years, and therefore as a lawyer, you can't just come up with a conclusion and say because people were murdered on this protest. Now, maybe the KDF or the National Police Service are the one responsible. But the government did not even come up with any investigation and did not come up with the names of people who were identified to be the killers of those protesters or those who wounded the protesters. But now, nearly a year after, the British Broadcasting Corporation, BBC Africa, made a documentary that exposed all those who actually participated in killing some of the protesters on that day, and they used a very I would say very detailed analysis. They used over 5,000 pictures and videos that were taken on that very day of the protest to come up with their investigation, and it is very sad that actually some of those people who participated in killing the protesters were members of the Kenyan Defense Forces. Very bad. Now, when BBC released this documentary recently, the documentary was received by mixed feelings from those who allied to the government and President William Arap Samuel Ruto and members of the public, and also those politicians allied to the opposition. They received this documentary with mixed feelings, and those in the government were against the documentary, that the documentary was distorted, the information was distorted, and it was meant to push like foreign interest on Kenya or foreign agenda. And those who were in the opposition and members of the public or Gen Zs who were victims of this protest, they came out and gave their sincere thanks to the British Broadcasting Corporation for releasing that documentary. And by the way, the documentary received a staggering number of viewers within 15 hours. Nearly 1 million people viewed that documentary in just less than a day. 800,000 people viewed that documentary, and that tells how interested the people were in this documentary. And just to give you another, I'll take you through some of the reaction from the members of public and some of the politicians in Kenya towards this documentary. And one of the reactions came from Honorable George Peter Kaluma. George Peter Kaluma, he's a member of parliament for the National Assembly for Homa Bay Town. And this is what Peter Kaluma said. The Capitol Hill, the seat of parliament in the United States, was breached, and BBC World did not publish the documentary Blood Parliament. It is unfortunate BBC Africa has not been sanctioned over 24 hours after publishing that distorted documentary. Blood Parliament, which by its title, timing, and twisted content is clearly intended to destabilize Kenya. We shouldn't allow reckless journalists to use foreign media to destabilize Kenya. Sanction BBC Africa hashtag. And by the way, Peter Kaluma, before the protest and during the protest, was a very a prominent person who was against the President William Arap Samuel Ruto, but also the Kenya Kwanza government. But now this is a person who is now talking in support of, if I'm to say, he's talking in support of the protest. He's not anymore concerned about the protest because he's now in government and a member of the Orange Democratic Movement. And this is what this person also said. Hanifa Adan. Hanifa she's a journalist, and she also featured in that documentary. By the way, she was one of the prominent people who were on the street of Nairobi protesting. And this is what Hanifa said: "I haven't slept until now. Just watched the BBC documentary Blood Parliament, and my heart is bleeding. I am broken that there is no justice for this kind of state sanctioned by brutality on its brave youths. Excellent investigative journalism. One of the killer cops revealed is actually stationed at Central, and he is one ruthless mafia. I've run into him severally on the streets, and he once fired a tear gas at my face when I was just walking." That is Hanifa Adan, and she's one of the persons who was very prominent during the Gen Z protest. And this is what Edwin Sifuna, the senator of Nairobi County, said: "The story of June 25th, 2024, it's already written. And as they say, the ink is dry. Those attempting to rewrite it will find it especially difficult because this particular piece of history is written in blood. Speaking as someone who was present in Parliament that day, the event depicted in the Blood Parliament documentary by BBC Africa Eye are not fabrications. They happen. We all saw it live on our screens. We must encourage these stories to be told from all angles for the sake of truth and justice. Those who are uncomfortable with this are wrestling with their own consensus, and we cannot help them with that. That is Edwin Sifuna, the senator of Nairobi County. And this is what Willis Evans Otieno, who is a lawyer, an advocate, and a deputy party leader for Safina political party, this is what he said. I was genuinely shaken to learn that the Kenyan Defense Forces, KDF, an institution we once held with deep respect, were part of this horror. Imagine a Kenyan soldier armed and trained to defend lives, shooting an armed civilian from just 25 meters away. Who sent them? Who gave the order? Days later, no answer, just silence and blood on the conscience of the state. So that is Willie Otieno. And this is actually, this documentary was debated earlier on today in the Kenyan National Assembly. And this is what the Member of Parliament for Mandera North, Basir Abdallah, said. People are killed all the time worldwide. We sympathize and move on. So to him, it's like, you know, what happened during the Gen Z protest, whatever number of people were killed, that should be a forgotten story. We just move on as a country. That is what he said. And this is what Millie Odhiambo, a member of parliament, the National Assembly, I think is for, I'm not sure if she's for Suna North or South, I mean Suba North or South, but this is what she said. People from outside are the one coming to document. We have problem as Kenyans. This is what Odhiambo said. And yeah, so many people gave their reaction to this documentary, and in most cases, those who are part of the government are feeling uncomfortable with this documentary, because it seems to have revealed the truth about what exactly happened during the Gen Z protest of June 25th, 2025. Now, the biggest question now will come, you know, this documentary is released, and so many people might ask that now that this documentary is released, BBC has it, and the members of the Kenyan Defense Forces who killed some of the protesters were identified. So what? This might be a question in so many people. Now, I want us to know that BBC, it's an international media, a foreign media, that any information released by this media is consumed by a very wide number of people. So many people consumed information released by BBC. This is a foreign media that is so popular on the world, has decades of existence, and therefore, if an information is published by BBC Africa, you know, so many people get to know about it, and people can easily change. You know, so many people have been, so many people know Kenya for at least being one of the countries in the eastern part of Africa that has some kind of democracy at least existing, and therefore an exposure of this government and the members of the Kenyan Defense Forces inserting force on mere civilians will change people's perception, because one, I feel that this is going to gain a lot of concern from global human rights organizations. They are going to demand for accountability for those who participated in killing this protest, but also it's going to have some kind of domestic repercussions, because now the Gen Zs have now noticed that, you know, all along the government has never come out with any accountability measures. They've never come out with those who involved in shooting our fellow Gen Zs during the protest. Now that the BBC has published this and they have identified those who got involved in killing these, so it might like bring in again that anger to be fresh. You know, it creates in some fresh wounds into Kenya, and this is dangerous. What I feel the government of Kenya should be doing right now, and the courts of Kenya should be doing, is that now that there is relevant evidence out there that actually says who killed those protesters, I think there should be some legal procedures taken so that these people should be brought to book. And when that is done, I feel it's just gonna create some kind of relief on the minds of these Gen Zs, because the government has never come out with any any accountability. They never released any name who participated in these killings. They said they were going to do it, but up to now, no name. But now BBC has released, and the most funniest thing is that actually BBC has identified that person, and now the person who actually killed two of the protesters who were surfaced on the documentary, the name of that member of the KDF is known. So let's see what the government of Kenya is going to do. Are they going to bring those members who participated to books, or what exactly is the government going to do? And what I've seen in most cases is that, you know, whenever anything happened in Kenya and that feels as a big blow on the government, you know, the members of parliament or the politicians who are allied to the government, in most cases, they have a tendency of coming out and just tweeting and writing randomly on social media, criticizing all this. I've seen it with several members of parliament allied to the president and government, especially those from the Senate and National Assembly. You know, remember what happened when the bishops came out and called against the government of Ruto. You know how these members of the Senate and the National Assembly allied to the president came out and just were tweeting against those bishops. You know, when things to do with the protests happen, you know how those members, you know, that tendency has been there. There seems to be no central point of information for government. You know, the government spokesperson, Isaac Maura, seems to have been rendered jobless nowadays. There's no any information that he comes out and becomes a final communication from the government. People just go and tweet randomly. And I feel that is one thing that the government of Kenya needs to work on. And regarding the Blood Parliament documentary, the current CS for Interior, Kipchumba Murkomen, said the government was going to give a very comprehensive report or response on the documentary, which was supposed to be today. But let's see and watch out what the government is going to say about this documentary. Are they going to bring those people who BBC identified to be the one who participated in killing those protesters to books, or what exactly is going to happen? So thank you so much again for watching this video, and if you feel this video is good for you, you can give us a follow, you can give us a comment, and just wait until we release our next video. Thanks so much for your support, and thanks for watching this. I remain Emmanuel, and this is the Concern Podcast, where we unpack political, socio-economic, and cultural stories shaping our world. Thank you. And sold